What is going on, my dudes? My name is AK540 and in today's video we're going to be discussing and looking at some very underrated and extremely underused weapons that I'm quite confused as to why people don't use them. Some of them are a bit unconventional, some of them are very niche, I would say, possibly, depending on the situation. However, I kind of feel like they are really undervalued. There's lots of uns. They're underdogs. Ooh, I like it. Anyway, so pretty much just to get straight into it, I'll go through the weapons one at a time. I've just copied the top class down, so you can sort of like, it's basically the same class setup at all. The only thing that's different in it is the gun. So the first gun we're going to be looking at is this lovely little marksman rifle. So you've got the EBR-14. It's called GGG because it's just when you name it, it's just the first letter that comes up. So when I'm trying to save a class quickly, I just put it as this. These are the attachments that were running on it. So you've got the FSS Raider Chassis Elite, the Viper Reflex sight. You could use a different one if you wanted. That would increase your ADS speed ever so slightly. The TAC laser, the 22-inch barrel, which is the longest barrel that you can get, although size isn't everything, just to put that out there. And the Merc foregrip for increased hipfire accuracy and recoil control. Now, I find that the 10-round mags are pretty much okay. It doesn't really matter what size you could put, you know, the 20-round mag. It still reloads the magazine pretty much the same speed regardless of the size, and the reload is really quite fast. So, sleight of hand isn't really something I think is warranted on this class. The good thing about this gun is it can drop a player with one shot to the head in close range or two shots, pretty much as far as the eye can see. You're not going to get into a situation really where this won't two-shot somebody. Okay, this is what I like about this. And it's a really good sort of, even though the setup seems to be more of a long-range setup, I mean, you could change the barrel if you really wanted to, if you were struggling with it, but the ADS speed is quite nice, and it's just a very good gun. Not a lot of people use it, and I genuinely don't understand why. It's when the game first came out, I can probably attest it wasn't particularly very good. Hasn't really had that many sort of, you know, buffs or whatnot to it over the past couple of months while the game has been out. But it has received some love, and the love it has received has made it pretty much a very viable battle rifle. And I don't really see a lot of people using it really, and it's a bit of a shame because it is a very good gun. It also helps that it looks amazing. It just looks astonishing. I'm using a blueprint on this. The blueprint, I believe, is called, when I find the right one, Linebreaker. That's the one. And that's what would normally be on the Linebreaker. Although I don't think you should use these attachments, only because it doesn't really play very well, in my opinion. But then again, if you've got the Linebreaker and you've never used it, you might want to give it a go. So, that's the first one. Next we have the Odin, which is another beautiful gun. It's also very underused, I find, and I think it's mainly because of the slow fire rate, even if it is a 2-bullet kill, which is quite interesting, really. It's a fully automatic weapon with a 2-bullet kill. So this is the setup that I have it in. You can take the monolithic suppressor off if you want. You don't need to run that, and you can put an underbarrel on if that's what you want to do. I run with the monolithic suppressor because I like to be off the compass at the top, or if there's a UAV off radar as well, if I'm running ghosts. I tried to set this up so it was an extremely sort of fast to reload weapon that you could like get a few shots off, kill a couple of people, pull back a bit, and then reload. Sort of more akin to an actual battle rifle than possibly the EBR-14. But this is the one we've got going for. So I've got the stipple grip tape for ADS speed, and obviously the ADS speed stock, the Elite Cone, and obviously sleight of hand, so we get those faster reloads. Now with the Odin, if you were going to go for longer ranges, you would probably want to put on a bigger barrel. It does have the colossal suppressor, so you could put that on if you really want to meme it up a bit, but I don't really think it needs that. The monolithic suppressor works just as well. So that's class number 2. Class number 3 is one that I don't see people using often, and I do not understand why, because it is an amazing gun, and that is the Scar H. It's just a phenomenal gun. I just can't get over how many people don't use it. The only caveat I would add is normally I don't run with the 17-inch barrel. I use the stock one, only because that increases the ADS speed a little bit. So obviously you've got the stipple grip tape and the close quarters. If you put the collapsible stock on it, it'll increase your ADS speed and movement speed substantially. However, you will get considerably more recoil. And the recoil on this gun is mainly vertical, so you don't have to worry about side to side too much. At least for the first couple of shots, under sustained fire maybe. I did play around for a long time with having extended barrels on it, so extended mags, sorry. So like a 25 round mag or a 30 round mag, that sort of thing. But overall, I think it's pretty much it's a pretty good gun in the setup that it is. You don't need to run with a monolithic suppressor. The only reason I like using the monolithic suppressor is because it has increased damage range. So if I can, I'll put it on pretty much any gun. The one thing I will say about the monolithic suppressor is it says that it reduces your ADS speed, but from what I can tell, it doesn't seem to have any real noticeable effect on your ADS speed. So there we go. So that's class number 3. Class number 4 is a gun I see nobody use ever, and I do not understand why. It is literally a little demon, and it's the AUG. And the thing I love about this is with the 5.56 NATO round conversion, even though I'm going to get into a bit of gun politics here, it's not really a gun conversion. The gun shoots this bullet by default. It's not actually meant to be an SMG, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong. Any gun nuts and gun freaks out there, please let me know in the comments if I am. But that is technically the gun conversion there, the 9mm. But anyway, that aside, I've been using this a lot lately, and I have not had so much fun with an SMG. You've got yourself an assault rifle with the movement speed of an SMG, and it's just mind-boggling to me that nobody uses this setup. I run with a Merc 4 grip, so I've got increased hip-fire accuracy. I don't use the rear grip at all. I stick with just the TAC CQB cone. And obviously, again, we've got the monolithic suppressor. And the other thing I like about this is it came in my 360 no-scope bundle, pretty much all laid out. I think the only thing it had was, yeah, this one. But I wouldn't necessarily run the 60 round, is it 60 round? Yeah, 60 round mags on it personally, because that will decrease your ADS speed considerably. Whereas the NATO rounds, so this is at default with no ammo attached to it at all. The NATO rounds, there is no decrease in your ADS speed. The only thing is the fire rate goes down a little bit and you get a bit more recoil. But again, Merc 4 grip, that will also increase your movement speed ever so slightly. And then the monolithic suppressor for extra range. You can't really, I'd say this is more of a sort of close to mid-range. Anything past mid-range and you're going to have to really concentrate. I like to run it with the iron sights because they're just nice and clean. So yeah, that's gun number 4. Number 5 is a gun I see nobody use, again, ever. And I do not understand why. It is genuinely one of the best guns I have ever used. It's difficult to use in the sense that you have to be accurate and you have to get that first shot off first. You can't, like, there have been very few moments where I've used this gun and I've sort of been shot at by something else like an M4, an MP5, etc. and have come out on top. So you have to make sure that you're as accurate as possible. I understand also that the iron sights on the default gun, some people don't like that. So these are the default iron sights that you would normally get, and they can put a lot of people off, and they are a bit janky. I bought a bundle, called Buzzsaw, which is what it would normally look like. It uses the AMOP reflex sight. I don't really like that sight. I've never found any love with that sight. But the thing I like about it is the iron sights are more akin to sort of like a Scar H sort of thing. So that's the setup I'm running. Rubberized grip tape for recoil control. I find that with the rubberized grip tape, so say for instance if I put like an underbarrel, like a foregrip or something on it, there's always a negative to the mobility, whereas with this one, as you can see, there's no negatives to ADS speed. It just helps with the recoil, and it really genuinely does. And again, we've got the monolithic suppressor and the shortest barrel. This barrel actually got a couple of buffs. in a couple of patches ago, where it basically increases the damage and makes it a little bit more of a viable weapon attachment. I used to use this before it was buffed. I say buffed, it's not particularly a buff. It's like sort of getting a stick that is slightly longer and then sort of sellotaping it to the end of a slightly shorter stick to make a slightly longer stick. It's a really shit analogy. It got a buff, but it isn't particularly that good of a buff. But overall, this gun, I genuinely have fun using it. It's in my loadouts as standard. You would think of it more of a point defense weapon. So if you were playing domination or hardpoint maybe, or even headquarters, and you were going to hold down a specific area, and I don't want to say camp because I don't camp with it, but what I mean is I play very objectively based. I PTFO, essentially. This is very good for holding down those areas. Very, very good. So, where are we now? Weapon number 6 is one that I see a couple of people use every now and then, but generally speaking, it's not particularly that favourable, and I don't particularly understand why, because it is astonishingly good. In most Call of Duties, if they ever have some form of an AK, they normally have an AK and then they'll have an M4 variant, and it doesn't really matter what game it is, there's always going to be one that is quintessentially an AK-47 and another which is quintessentially an M4A1, and there are people on both sides of the camps that like one for the other, and both guns are perfectly viable. This, however, with the ammo conversion, the 545 by 39, it turns it into a completely different beast. The AK on its own with normal ammo, just the normal mag in it, that works just as well. This is fine as is. It works. It drops people quickly. There's a bit more recoil, but generally speaking, it does what it says on the tin. However, with the 545-39 rounds, it just becomes even more of a viable weapon. So if we look at the pros here, we get a massive boost to our fire rate, we get an extra bit of mobility and better control. We lose a bit of damage, although I don't really understand how that makes any sense because it still drops people in about 3 bullets anyway. And because I'm using the, I believe it's called the Black Bear, is that what it's called? Yeah, Black Bear one, which is the one you get with Talon. It's the Talon bundle. Basically, when you shoot people, it dismembers their body parts. So if you shoot them in the head, which is particularly easy to do, because you just aim for center mass and just let the recoil climb up, so you're shooting them on the first few bullets, you just let the recoil go up just one, and then on the third bullet it connects, and it's just so satisfying. On this, I would run either the operator foregrip, which is what it comes with naturally anyway, which I ran for a really long time and thoroughly enjoyed it, or the Ranger foregrip. I use the Ranger only because when normally in this game, I understand why, because it's a small stubby foregrip, and it's how you hold the gun. But when you have a stubby foregrip, the character tends to hold the gun in a way that I don't particularly like. So I use the Ranger foregrip purely for aesthetic reasons. But I find that even though it does reduce your ADS speed a bit, all of the extra bonuses you get, I mean, you get better accuracy, your range pretty much goes back to what it was originally before the ammo conversion, and you get a lot better control. So the sacrifice to the mobility, the ADS speed, is perfectly warranted in my opinion. If you wanted to, you could use rubberized grip tape, but again, it depends on the weapon. I find I wouldn't use rubberized grip tape on this. I would use only stipple grip tape. But this gun is a beast. If you can't deal or can't handle using the iron sights, because I understand the iron sights in the AK, it's a bit like aiming down a brick. Like, get a brick and chisel a line down one side and chisel a line down the other, and so you've got a raised platform in the middle, and then aim at someone with a brick. It's like, I can understand it. The AK takes up a lot of the screen, and the iron sights are a bit finicky to use. But as long as you're not trying to aim for a head glitch at sort of 50 meters away, you're generally golden. So if you can't deal with not using a sight, the best one I can suggest you use would be the GI Mini Reflex, as it's the cleanest and the clearest, and just swap that for sleight of hand, because the reload speed with the 545-39 rounds is isn't that like, it doesn't take very long. It's quite nice. If you were getting pushed by a guy and you just sort of came around the corner to reload, you might find that they catch you with your pants down essentially, but other than that, generally a solid gun, and I don't see why nobody uses it because it is just amazing. Next, moving on, we have the P90. I do see people using this quite a lot, but I see people using it in very strange setups that don't seem to complement the gun. Now I understand that if you stick the longer barrel on, you get increased range and bullet velocity and recoil control and whatever else, and fair enough, but you get damage range with the monolithic suppressor. Again, I use the monolithic suppressor a lot. So we've got the rubberized grip tape to reduce the recoil. It does hurt your mobility ADS speed a slight, but if you compare all the other sort of like advantages you get, it's pretty much up there with sort of like, you know, the stipple grip tape really. It's in the same sort of vein, but you don't actually get that much of a penalty to the mobility compared to the stipple grip tape. So, and then obviously on the pistol grip side of things, we've got the stipple grip tape again, so we've got ADS speed. And what you want to make sure is, if you're ever going to put stipple grip tape on anything, okay, make sure it says and states sprint to fire speed. Anything that says sprint to fire speed means that if you're running down a corridor and you see an enemy and you have to lift your gun up to shoot, it'll shoot faster, it'll aim quicker, essentially. It won't shoot faster, it'll aim quicker onto your target. So always make sure that if you're putting stipple grip tape on, or any type of attachment, if it says that it increases sprint to fire speed, that is a good attachment to have, especially if you're running around and moving. And then obviously we've got the fly strap, that again, sprint to fire speed, aim walking movement speed, and sleight of hand, so it can reload a bit quicker. It reloads relatively fast without sleight of hand, but with sleight of hand it's just like the guy just rips it out and slams another one in. It's just amazing. And this is like so accurate. It's like a headshot laser beam. You can pretty much beam people and just completely melt their face, and it's one of the reasons I use it a lot. I used to use it in an overkill class with a Kar 98 if I was playing objective based game modes and wanted to snipe but wanted to have the backup essentially. That's pretty good for that. The next gun we have that I don't see a lot of people using, and I can perfectly understand why, because it is a bit of a bad gun, is the Holger, or the G36C. I use it in this setup. I use the rubberized grip tape. Again, I seem to find on certain guns the rubberized grip tape doesn't seem to do a lot to anything, so I use it when I can. We have the Ranger foregrip again. You don't necessarily need to use this because obviously you've got the rubberized grip tape. I would probably put something like maybe the FFS infantry for increased aim walking speed, because it is an LMG, so you do aim a bit slower. But there we go. That it's comparable. It's not the best gun. Okay, I know I'm trying to like sell these guns on you because they're like, you know, underused, and by telling you it's not the best gun, it's probably not going to make you want to use it a lot. But in terms of dropping people, if you're coming up against 4 or 5 dudes, like the M4 with a 50 round mag is way better, way better. But if you're playing on slightly larger maps with longer lines of sights, dealing with sort of mid-range and whatever else engagements, I find that this sort of setup works really well for that. I wouldn't try to run and gun on like shoot house with it, but I also say that and have done that before, and it's worked perfectly fine. But I don't know, this is a bit of a wild card, I would say. It's more of an outlier. It's one of those niche guns that not a lot of people use, and I understand why, because there are better alternatives out there. But in terms of like the way a gun looks and the way a gun feels and how it plays, I really like this gun. It's a really good fun. It's a good fun gun. Good fun gun. It's a GFG to use. It's very GFG. And then we're getting to the last ones now. The MTAR, or the Ram 7. Again, I see a few people use this, but I find that they're using it in a setup that's more sort of based for Warzone, really long ranges. And I don't really see why. Because of its super fast fire rate, it's pretty much the M4 killer. Like you can go up against M4s and MP5s with this perfectly fine and not really suffer all that much. I do have it as one of my default class guns, so it's there if I need to. It's sort of my if everyone's running around with an M4A1 and an MP5 or an MP7, that sort of thing, this is my go-to. And I run this setup because you don't really need the barrel. I think the barrel attachments are a bit pointless for this gun, if I'm honest. I have the Commando foregrip because this gun does shake a bit side to side when you first shoot. It's very unstable because of the higher recoil, the higher fire rate. I have stipple grip tape because obviously, as you can see, if you put the recoil control on there, it totally ruins your ADS speed. But even though that is below the standard line, see the line, and then it's like there's a gap, and then there's the green bit. Even though it is below that line of the standard ADS speed, it doesn't ADS particularly slowly. I use this a lot on vacant because on vacant the walls are thin enough to wallbang. Well, I say that it's thin enough to wallbang if you're using FMJ. If you're not using FMJ, you're going to be using a bit of bigger bullet like an AK or a Galil or something. But overall, this is a very good gun, and with the 50 round mags, you can properly go to town on a group of guys, like in like a corridor or something. If there's a couple of people grouped up, you can pop from one enemy to another. You can do it literally like you can shoot one, move to the other, shoot the other, move to the other, shoot the other, and then go back again and kill them before they have chance to do anything about it. It's a very solid gun to use, and I don't understand why people don't use it more. I would definitely suggest using FMJ. The reload of the 50 round mags is a little slow without sleight of hand, but it's not like, it's never really gotten me killed. I've never had a situation where I've had to reload, do a tactical reload or a full reload, and you know, it's never really seemed to ever get me killed. The only thing obviously that I will say is that without the extended barrel, you don't get very good long range like damage over range, so your damage is quite low. It's more suited for CQB, close quarters battle, I would say. And the final gun is the Kilo. Now, I know that people use the Kilo. I get killed by the Kilo quite a lot. Well, quite a lot. I have been killed by the Kilo, and I genuinely think it's underrated, especially in this setup that we have here. So the Commando foregrip, you don't necessarily need to do this if you want to. You could use the Ranger or the Operator if you want. Again, it's more of an aesthetic thing. The gun doesn't really have that much side-to-side recoil, but I find that with the Commando foregrip, it completely reduces that side-to-side recoil to the point where it doesn't exist, pretty much, and it's a laser beam. We've got the monolithic suppressor, the 50 round mag, stipple grip tip, and the FMJ. So the setup is very similar to the Ram 7. So there you go. Those are my guns. I think are highly underrated, and people do not use them. And I don't understand why. I genuinely don't, because they're very good guns. Anyway, if you enjoyed listening to me waffle on about guns for however long this is, then please hit that subscribe button. If you didn't and you didn't like it, then please fuck off and go watch someone else's videos and give them some love instead. Anyway, I'm your host AK, and as always, I'll see you in the next iteration. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. Oh, well, shiver me timbers, you're still here, that's great. I'm going to pop off, make myself a cup of tea, have a couple of cheeky biscuits. There are some videos on your screen, why don't you click one that takes your fancy? Whichever one you want, whichever takes your fancy, do it. Do it now, do it. Anyway, bye.